You step outside, concrete under your feet, buildings stacked for miles, thousands of strangers moving past you, and none of them are family. You do not hunt your food, you do not build your shelter, and you do not even know most of your neighbors' names. Someone else grows the wheat, someone else lays the bricks, someone else keeps the lights on, and you just live your life inside a system built by people you will never meet. No cities, no governments, no strangers living peacefully side by side. For almost the entire span of human existence, none of that existed. For thousands of generations, humans moved in small bands, rarely more than a few dozen people, and everyone knew everyone. Then, in a shift so sudden it still puzzles researchers today, that pattern broke completely. And what triggered it will change how you see the birth of civilization itself. So what actually made humans stop wandering and start building together? Let us start with something that should not have been possible. In 1994, German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt began excavating a hill in southeastern Turkey called Göbekli Tepe. What he found underneath forced historians to rewrite the timeline of human civilization. Buried beneath the soil were massive stone pillars, some over 16 feet tall and weighing up to 10 tons, arranged in circles and carved with images of foxes, scorpions, and vultures. Radiocarbon dating placed the site at roughly 9,600 BCE, nearly 11,600 years old, almost 6,000 years before the pyramids of Giza. Here is the problem. Farming had not been invented yet. There were no domesticated animals, no metal tools, no permanent villages anywhere nearby. The people who built this were still hunter-gatherers, moving with the seasons, tracking game across open land. They had no supply chain, no engineers, no blueprints, just stone tools and raw human coordination. And yet, they quarried multi-ton limestone blocks from a nearby bedrock, dragged them uphill, and stood them upright in precise circular formations, work that would have required hundreds of people cooperating for months, maybe years, with no ruler ordering them to do it. And strangely, many of these structures were not simply abandoned. Archaeologists found that several were deliberately buried under tons of rubble and soil after a period of use, intentionally closed rather than left to decay, an act that would have taken almost as much coordinated effort as building them in the first place. Civilization did not begin with the plow. It began with a gathering of strangers who decided together to build something bigger than any one of them could carry. Now, some of you are thinking, fine, hunter-gatherers built one strange site, that does not mean anything changed. Fair pushback. For decades, that was actually the accepted theory too, and Göbekli Tepe broke it. Since the 1950s, archaeologists followed a model proposed by Gordon Schilde. Farming came first. Surplus grain led to settled villages. Settled villages led to specialization, and specialization eventually produced monuments. Food, in other words, built monuments. Göbekli Tepe flipped that sequence on its head. The site sits roughly 30 kilometers from the Karahan mountain range. The exact region a 1997 genetic study in the journal Science traced as the origin point of domesticated einkorn wheat, humanity's first cultivated crop. That means the world's oldest known monumental site and the birthplace of farming sit almost next to each other. The monument came first. The wheat came after. Excavators did not just find pillars at Gobekli Tepe. They found bones, enormous quantities of them. Gazelle, Aros's wild boar, all butchered and discarded around the site in numbers far beyond what any single family or band could consume. Researchers studying the deposits concluded these were not everyday meals. They were feasts, large seasonal gatherings that pulled bands together, fed them, and sent them home. And Göbekli Tepe was not alone. In 2019, archaeologists began serious excavation at Karahan Tepe, a second site just 35 kilometers away, dated to roughly the same period. It holds its own forest of T-shaped pillars, along with a chamber containing a carved human head staring out from the bedrock itself. Two sites, same era, same region, same impossible ambition. Not a fluke, a pattern. Some researchers estimate a single gathering at Göbekli Tepe could have pulled in several hundred people at once, a crowd roughly 10 times larger than any single band could ever produce on its own. And strangely, strangers were not gathering because someone had already solved the food problem. They were gathering first, feasting together, building together, and the farming came later, almost as an afterthought. Civilization did not wait for agriculture. It arrived hungry for something else entirely: connection. So what did that hunger for connection actually look like on the ground? Picture it. You are not a builder. You are a hunter-gatherer, and it is the season for the gathering. Bands start arriving from days away. People whose faces you barely know. Some you have never seen at all. Within days, your camp of maybe 30 people swells into hundreds. This is not a workday. There is no foreman, no wages, no deadline carved in stone. You haul a pillar because the group next to you is hauling one too, and falling behind means losing face in front of people you are trying to impress. Some of these pillars weighed as much as a fully loaded truck. Moving one meant dozens of people pulling in exact rhythm. One person out of step could shift the load and crush someone's foot. So trust was not a luxury, it was survival. Here is a challenge on a scale your ancestors had never experienced. Anthropologists studying hunter-gatherer bands consistently find they max out around 25 to 50 people. Everyone tracked by memory, every relationship personal. Göbekli Tepe demanded cooperation from crowds 10 times that size. Strangers had to trust strangers with no chief, no law, and no shared blood to fall back on. By evening, the stonework stops. What continues is the fire, the roasting meat, the carved faces staring down from the pillars, watching the crowd the way no ancestor's eyes ever had. Somewhere between the hauling and the storytelling, humans had solved a problem no band alone could face. Here's what makes this leap so staggering. For countless generations, cooperation only worked among people who shared blood. Strangers were a threat, not a workforce. Something at Gobekli Tepe broke that rule thousands of years ago. And we are still living inside the aftershock. The stranger who delivered your food today, the stranger who wired your building, the stranger who wrote the code your phone runs on, none of them related to you by blood, all of them trusted anyway. It started with the pillars carved with foxes and vultures, hauled by hands that had no chief to answer to. It started with the bones piled high from feasts that fed hundreds of people who had arrived as strangers. It started with Karahan Tepe, 35 kilometers away, proving it was not an accident. It started with wheat, domesticated only after the gathering, not before it. So the next time you step outside into concrete and crowds, into thousands of people who share none of your blood, understand what you are actually standing inside, not a modern invention. An ancient experiment in trusting strangers, one that started with a feast around some stones in Turkey and never really ended. We didn't just build civilization to survive. We built it because we wanted the strangers to stay.